What is going on, New York Jet fans? Hello, everyone. Welcome back here into another edition of NY Fly Jets Talk. As always, I am your host, Connor Long, and joining me today, New York Jets draft savant, analyst, whatever you want to call him, my colleague over at JetsXFactor.com, the great Dom C, giving us some of his time right before the offseason. Dom, just one game left, and then after that, it's officially your time to shine in draft land. I wish we could just fast forward past Sunday.
Yeah, well, listen, man, with this season that we've been enduring, Connor, I've put it in fast forward gear a few weeks back. So
Absolutely.
appreciate you having me on, man, to talk some ball here.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's a perfect time to have you on, right? Because you've done all these evaluations on these different quarterbacks that are supposed to come out, and the Jets obviously expected to, take a quarterback very high in this year's NFL draft. And we saw three of those top guys in action yesterday: Alabama's Ty Simpson, Indiana's Fernando Mendoza, Oregon's Dante Moore, and then kind of a fourth guy who entered the conversation after his stellar performance last night, knocking off, getting a win over Georgia, and that is Trinidad Chambliss, the quarterback at Ole Miss. And it's good to see him have success, Dom, right? Because you wrote about him just a few weeks ago in an article for us over at Jets X Fact. You highlighted two quarterbacks that anti-tank Jets fans should be rooting for. Shamblas was one of them. The second one was Colt Payton of North Dakota State. So I'll start with Shamblas because just today, even less than 24 hours removed from his performance, scrolling on Jets Twitter, I already see fans saying, "Oh, Trinidad Chambliss at 18 with the Colts pick," things of that nature. When you talk about him compared to the Dante Moores, compared to the Fernando Mendoza, the Ty Simpsons who have garnered all the buzz, who is Trinidad Chambliss? What is his role at the next level? And really, what is a realistic draft position for him?
Well, I think you saw a good taste of what, those who watched the game between Ole Miss and Georgia yesterday saw a glimpse of probably the front line or the top end of the spectrum of what you can get from Trinidad Chambliss. I mean, listen, he's a true mobile threat, and when I talk about mobile threat, Connor, I'm talking about not only can he hurt you with his legs, which he can. I mean, he definitely fills that dual threat role. He's much more of a much more can affect the game with his legs than the likes of Jackson Dart, who was there before him last year, or guys like Moore or Mendoza, who are athletic, or even Ty Simpson, who are athletic but different type of athletic, more functionally athletic. Chambliss, I think, is a true threat with his legs. Now, the thing with Chambliss is real throw, real imbalance, fluid throwing motion. His mechanics when the pocket is clean is very good. I love the way that he, I think everything for him, and this might be more of an Ole Miss thing, if I'm being honest. And kudos, to Lane Kiffin and Charlie or whoever the offense coordinator is. I can't think of his name now. But they have everything kind of rhythmic, and when the quarterbacks and everything are playing in rhythm, it just looks really pretty.
Eyes are wide open as well.
Yeah, they scheme them. They scheme their wide receivers open very well. Chambliss is a very rhythmic passer. He can throw with anticipation. Kind of almost like. And I'm not. This is not a comparison at all. But think back. Let's correlate this to the Jets. I mean, we've seen Tua play enough. When Tua's in, when Tua and the McDonald offense is kind of in high gear, and everything is just boom, boom, boom. He's throwing to a spot, and everything's right there, and it's just fluid. I see a lot of that, like high end Tua Tagovailoa in the pros in Trinidad Chambliss game. Except Trinidad Chambliss, like I said, he can add that little dimension with his legs. I mean, they have, numerous, and I don't have the stats in front of me. I probably should have pulled them up for you, but I don't know how many yards he does with his, or he had with his legs this year. However, they have they have no problem scheming him open with his legs, like running those quarterback powers, running those quarterback draws, all those quarterback counters, all that stuff. And then you get him outside of the pocket, and that's when I think he's probably at his best, because he doesn't lose arm strength like a lot of the quarterbacks do when he's, perpetually, off platform or breaking contain. He's dangerous. He's got a good arm. I'm not going to say it's, like NFL, he's not Josh Allen. He's not Jeff George. He doesn't have like a howitzer on his shoulder, but he delivers a really good, catchable, accurate ball. And I think that, he's got enough velocity that he can make all the throws. With him, it's just gonna it's always gonna come down the matter with Trinidad Chambliss. It's gonna be a couple of things. One, I think he's not going to be everyone's cup of tea in terms of his physical stature. They list him at 6'1", 200, Connor. I highly doubt he's going to measure at 6'1". I highly doubt he's going to measure at 6 foot. So you might be looking like Kyler Murray, 5'10", 5'11" guy, 200 pounds. And that's just not going to be, he's not going to make the cut for some NFL boards just because of his, modest size. Also, remember, that transfer from, fifth-year player, transfer from Ferris State Division II, so he's already 24. He'll be a 24-year-old rookie going into this year.
Yeah, he's going to be 24 in August of next year. He's going to be 24 for week 1. And look, that's not going to make or break anyone's draft stock, but it's certainly going to play a role. I mean, sure.
No, it absolutely will play a role. You look at Tyler Shuck last year coming out, and he was 25, soon to be 26 during the season. And I don't think Trinidad Chambliss is like the complete quarterback prospect that Shuck was. I thought Shuck had more arm talent. I thought Shuck was a little bit more game ready, a little bit more seasoned. And the reason he probably didn't make the first round is because he was 26 years old or going to be 26 years old. So it's going to have an effect on Trinidad Chambliss. I don't know if he's a first round quarterback. I mean, he didn't grade out as one for me. He graded out, with a third round grade, which is fine. There's nothing wrong with that. Quarterbacks are always finicky because they always get overdrafted. So a third round grade can easily make it into the back end of the first round. I'm not sure, Jets fans, they're a finicky bunch, man. And they love to ride the hot hand. So yesterday there was no hotter hand in the land than Trinidad Chambliss. I don't know if he's, really, for me, worth the roll of the dice in the first round. But, again, we have 2 second-round picks. I'm assuming, this is just my assumption, I'm guessing that probably won't take all 4 of those picks one way or another. If we happen to miss out on one of the other main quarterbacks, trading up to get one of those, my guess is that we'll probably use one of those seconds and trade down to acquire some more, a round 3 pick or so on and so forth. And, he's right in the mix. I don't know if he's NFL ready, but you talk about his skill set. You talk about the understanding of the threat with his legs, full RPO understanding. That's what they do at Ole Miss. So he's, kind of in the wheelhouse of Tanner Angstrom and what he's already designed or was supposed to design for Justin Fields, which didn't work out that well. So it's interesting. There's some nuances that, make you think that there's a really good fit there between Chambliss and the Jets, and it doesn't have to do just with his performance yesterday versus a really good Georgia defense. Like I said, I kind of mentioned this a couple weeks ago. There's some correlation to what he wants to do and what Glenn has specified he's looking for in his quarterback, and Chambliss carries a lot of that.
Yeah, absolutely. And he's certainly interesting in where he's ultimately going to fall on draft boards, because not only is age, someone who is 23 right now, going to be 24 ahead of week 1 of his rookie season, but also this is only a year at the Division I level, really. And I think that's important to keep in mind. It's great to see him shine. I love stories like this, but look, that's a very limited sample size at the Division I level for someone to be first-round pick. The difference between, Division I to even high-end Division II is night and day.
Yeah.
It's a different animal. I
You
think you really got to keep that in mind. Everyone really with the evaluation of this quarterback, and to kind of play on his side. Look, it is still so early in the pre-draft process. We're recording this right now on January 6th. At this time last year, people really started to go all in on Jackson Dart, who was obviously at Ole Miss last year, and it was okay. He could be a third, he could be a fourth round pick. Then comes the Senior Bowl. All right, he's a high end third round guy, maybe end of the second round. The pro day continued to up his stock. Obviously, these super odd pre-draft process with Shedeur Sanders, and he ends up being a first round pick. So I say all of that to really make the point of nobody knows. There is still so much time, and you really don't know what NFL team is going to fall in love with him, because there are a lot of teams that need quarterbacks in this year's draft beyond the Las Vegas Raiders, beyond the New York Jets. You look at a team like the Arizona Cardinals. I wouldn't rule out, maybe the Cleveland Browns trying to take a quarterback in the first round. We don't know if they're fully sold on Shedeur Sanders. There are a lot of different teams that are going to try to get a quarterback. The Pittsburgh Steelers with the uncertainty of Aaron Rodgers' future. So there are a lot of quarterback needy teams and not a lot of established quarterbacks in this year's draft. Now, as of now, again, there's still so much that could change. You're obviously going to be boots on the ground down in Mobile, so you're going to get an evaluation on about 5 of these quarterbacks. But where would you say Chambliss ranks in your order kind of quarterbacks?
Well, right now he's of all the guys who have declared, he's quarterback 5, and that takes out 5 guys. I had 5 guys, or I'm sorry, I had 4 guys graded.
Oh, not Dante Moore. Not Ty Simpson.
Right now, my top 5 in order is Mendoza, Dante Moore, Ty Simpson, Garrett Nussmeier, Trinidad Chambliss.
So you have Nussmeier over him.
Yeah, and the Nussmeier grade and the Chambliss grade for me, they're both almost dead on. Literally hundreds of a points. Nussmeier's hundredth of a point higher than Chambliss. So they're right there smack in the middle of the third round grade. Now, I did have guys like Darian Mensah, Brandon Sorsby, Lenora Seller, and Jaden Maeva all ranked higher than both Nussmeier and Chambliss. So that'll tell you, the real punch in the gut that this quarterback class took with all of these guys kind of staying in school. Now, the funny thing with Chambliss is he's not a guarantee to come out either. He's already applied and petitioned the NCAA for a 6th-year waiver. His sophomore year at Ferris State, he had tonsillitis and he did not step on the field. So he's applying for a medical red shirt for that season. So he could be granted a 6th year. And if he's already said, it's already known that if he gets a 6th year, he'll be LSU starting quarterback this next year under Lane Kiffin.
That's like crazy to me, Dom, because look, then he's entering the Tyler Shuck territory. He's going to be 25 when he makes his NFL debut. How much is he really going to develop next year and up his draft stock compared to, maybe if he were to declare this year and perhaps not start right away with an NFL team, but I think he would be selected a lot higher this year in what is a weak quarterback class in my eyes. Not a weak, I think it's top heavy, right? They don't have much depth. Compared to last year, there were a lot of guys through the final rounds. I'm not going to say weak because I do really like Fernando Mendoza. I do really like Dante Moore. There's something there with Ty Simpson that I think is worth investing in, but it's top heavy. Again, a lot of quarterback needy teams, not a lot of quarterbacks. So look, I think him maybe waiting a year would hurt him more than it would help him.
Well, here's the thing. If he comes out, if he's granted the waiver, now the initial reports are the NCAA was going to deny the waiver. Now, and Chambliss and his, people or his crew or whomever have hired an attorney to kind of push back and fight back. There's no secret. If he's granted the 6th-year waiver, he's looking probably at a $4 to $5 million NIL deal. I can tell you that would be his deal coming from Ferris State to Ole Miss wasn't even 6 figures. So you're talking major implications in terms of his finances and securing his future. If he does go back now, he can make that if he sneaks into the first round as well. Again, I'm going to lie. I'm going to stand on the side of I think that if I'm Trinidad Chambliss in his camp, and I'm weighing out all the pros and cons. The reality is, like you talked about, there's a lot of teams that need quarterbacks, right? Yeah. Of those teams that need quarterbacks, how many of them are going to kind of not even entertain him if he's sub 6 feet tall, if he's sub 205 pounds? They're because it's going to happen. I'll tell you this much: Arizona's not gonna. If Arizona moves on from Kyler Murray, they're not bringing in in essence, a Kyler Murray clone, because that's my pro comp for Trinidad Chambliss is Kyler Murray, which is fine. That's a good comp. You know what I mean? Yeah. But I would assume he's not going to be in there. And not that they're looking for a quarterback, but there are teams. Green Bay's being one of them that I know has specific physical factors that they will not even entertain thresholds that they won't even entertain a prospect if they don't meet. 6 feet tall is not going to be on everyone's board.
But what is that going to change next year, though? That's the question. Like, how does that,
it won't change next year, but it'll make him $5 million richer.
Absolutely. And that's what I wanted to touch on next, kind of, quickly. NIL has changed everything. Just quickly hit on that because, a lot of the motivation, I was talking about this with my dad yesterday, a lot of the motivation to declare for the NFL draft for, some players was, I want that check. I want to, retire my parents. I want to retire my family. A lot of it was the money. Now, you look at a player like Trinidad Chambliss, like you're talking about, he could stay back, go to LSU, like you mentioned, potentially be in line $5-6 million NIL deal, and he's making more money in 1 year than the total value, total value contract of a third or fourth rounder. Those are typically estimated around $5-6 million total over the course of 4 years. So, look, that has really changed everything on how players view the landscape. So, and I think this quarterback class as a whole is certainly interesting. I think a lot of people were pleased with the performance from Dante Moore yesterday, which did surprise me a little bit because him and that offense struggled. They failed to come up in big moments. They failed to turn those field goals into touchdowns. I think the promising area, though, is Dante Moore has struggled underneath, analytically speaking, for most of the year, and his deep ball had success. Well, his deep ball, took a seat back yesterday against Texas Tech. He really, really dominated the short game, which I think is important for his evaluation because that shows he can do a little bit of both.
Yeah, he is. When you talk about pure arm talent, I'm not talking about velocity. I'm talking about everything accompanied in what a quarterback does throwing the ball. His release, the way it comes off his hand, just the flick of the wrist and him being able to get the ball out there, him being able to layer it over defenders in different areas or those tight window, NFL window anticipation throws. Like there's probably no better pure arm talent when it's all said and done than Dante Moore. I think he's cool. I think he's, for the most part, he's like a silent assassin. Like he maneuvers around the pocket well. I love how he keeps everything looking downfield. In a clean pocket, he's going to tear you up, and I say that about actually both of the top guys, like Fernando Mendoza and Dante Moore. In clean pockets, they will, like a surgeon's precision, cut you the heck up.
The issue with Mendoza is when the pocket collapses, though. Like he's struggled against.
Listen. I know that there's a knock on him for that. I don't know if he has the same sort of pocket awareness that Dante Moore does. I don't know, and I think this is my opinion only. I think it's a little bit outplayed that he can't play off platform. Definitely not his strong suit. He's definitely much more of a timing and rhythmic passer. But when he has to break contain and when he's off platform, he's mobile enough to hurt you with his legs. His arm from his years at Cal to this year in Indiana, His percentage of accuracy while off platform has really increased. It's something he's, that he's kind of matured and grew into. But Dante Moore has that, he just has that coolness and that calmness in his, throwing motion. And you talked about the deep ball. Like he's, to me, I know this is, this probably predates you in terms of your age, but I don't know if you remember Jordan Love coming out of Utah State.
Not coming out, but like I remember.
Yeah, he was a raw prospect. But man, he had this beautiful, beautiful, ball that traveled 30 yards plus. Like that deep ball, there was nothing prettier. That's Dante Moore, except Dante Moore's not as raw. You know what I mean? He reminds me a lot of Jordan Love coming out of college. Now, I think the perfect situation for Dante Moore would be to get the Jordan Love treatment, right? To come in. He's a little bit slender. I think he needs to put on a little weight. I don't think it's going to hurt his mobility or his athleticism, because I don't think it's, I don't think the mobility or athleticism is like kind of upper echelon. I think it's just kind of average. So it's not like it's gonna make him slower or less twitchy. I don't think he moves very fast or very twitchy to begin with. I think it'll help even more of his arm strength. I think it'll help him take some punishment that he's gonna endure in the NFL. Again, he's 6'3". I'd be willing to guess that he's under 210 pounds, even though that's what Oregon lists him at. Definitely a little slender, definitely a little inconsistent on those intermediate throws. I'd like to see him improve on some of that, and I think a lot of that is just mechanical. When he really gets his hips into it and drives off the ground and gets everything moving forward, he's on point. When he kind of drifts back and stays back, he tends to release a little high. And sometimes I think case in point is yesterday. You watched the game, Connor. I don't know if you did, or if anybody watching this watched the game. There was a fourth down play where he's just got a little bit camera shy. He had Kenyon Sadiq breaking through the middle wide open in a post.
I wrote about that earlier today.
Yeah, not even NFL open. Like he was wide open. And either he missed him or he just was hesitant, just a little bit hesitant to make that throw. He's got to, he's just got to trust what he's seeing a little bit more. Again, only 21 years old, a lot to really, really like. We're talking Jets, in an ideal situation. I've said this before. I've gotten a lot of crap for it, if you will, but, obviously Mendoza's my number one. If we miss out on Mendoza, and Moore is your fallback, I'd be completely fine with that. I'd still want to bring in a quarterback, not to kind of hold the seat warm for Moore, to compete with Moore. And if you bring in a Malik Willis, or you bring, not that I like him, I'll use him as an example. You bring in a Marcus Mariota, or you trade for the guy from Philadelphia, so on and so forth. Tanner McKee. And those guys win the job and are your quarterbacks for the whole year. If the team's successful, that's not a bad thing, right? If the team is successful, it's not a bad thing. Look at the quarterbacks in the past 5 years who have had the time to sit back and weren't rushed in year one, right? There's two that come to mind: Patrick Mahomes, Jordan Love. Why? Because they had good established quarterbacks ahead of them on teams that were winning. They didn't need to play.
Absolutely. And I think they also, the example that I like to give, someone else who sat on a good team at the time, was Jalen Hurts. And he kind of, look, Jalen Hurts, you can have the debate whether he's a top 5 quarterback or not. Jalen Hurts is a good quarterback, bottom line. No matter where you have him ranked, he's a very, very good quarterback that any Jet fan would take in a heartbeat. End of story. And the biggest thing for me with him is he sat, and he had a development plan in place. Philadelphia gave him the tools to succeed and had a coaching staff that was able to develop him. I think the Jets need to make significant additions and subtractions to the offensive coaching staff this offseason, particularly quarterbacks coach with Charles London. They need to get someone in there who has a proven track record of developing quarterbacks, and someone who's been around a lot of top quarterbacks. That's certainly a coaching job that a lot of people will be on the lookout for this offseason. Another top guy who we haven't really gotten into yet, who I wanted to pick your brain on, is Ty Simpson from Alabama. Look, it's been up and down, up and down, up and down.
Yeah.
When he secured that comeback win over Oklahoma in the first round of the college football playoffs, everyone was back up on him. But before that, the stock was super low. And then obviously yesterday's game, that stock shot right back down. The fumble, getting hurt, having to come out of the game, and then that freshman, Austin Mack. I don't know if you're watching the game yesterday.
Yeah. He sure can. He's
an interesting player. But with Ty Simpson, look, he's not as flashy as a Mendoza with the pretty deep balls, or a Dante Moore with that crazy ability. What I've seen from Ty Simpson is someone who is really, really good at processing the field and has overall, I think, a solid pocket presence. Those are the two biggest things that stand out to me when I turn on the Ty Simpson film. Do you think he declares this year? Because look, that's not a great performance to go packing on.
I think he does, again, because he's going to be in the same boat as Dante Moore. If he doesn't, he's going to be looking at 24 going on to his 25 year. By the time his rookie
is Dante
year,
that old though?
He's 23 years old. Yeah, he's 23
Dante
years old right now. No. I'm sorry, Ty Simpson.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Dante's only 21. Dante's only
21.
Yeah.
Ty is older because he sat behind Milroe and that.
Correct. So he's 23 right now. He'll turn 24 at some point during his his rookie season in the NFL if he comes out. He does have eligibility. So if he goes back, then you're looking at a guy who's going to be 24, 25 with his first year. Okay. So you run into that same kind of thing that Trinidad Chambliss might run into, or they talked about with Bo Nix, because you remember Bo Nix was an older prospect as well with the COVID year. Here's the thing with Ty Simpson. I think, I love the release. I love the accuracy. He's got like an 82 adjusted completion percentage throughout this season, which is phenomenal. Again, another guy who sees what he sees and makes his decision.
Yep.
You love that. You love that. Especially with us Jets fans who have watched quarterbacks with hesitant or with shy trigger fingers. Going back from Sam when Darnold was here, Justin Fields per se. Even Zach sometimes, and Zach tried to counteract it, by just being too aggressive and turning the ball over. So Ty's a very, very good improviser in that sense. Like, I love the way he commands the offense. I love the way that he's very athletic, and I think his athleticism really helps him elude rushers. It helps him extend plays, to make, to keep his eyes downfield and make those plays. He's got a really good arm. Some will argue it's the best arm of the three the three big names that we've all been talking about for a while. I don't know if it's the best. And I don't know. Listen, you put them in you lump them all together. I think they're good. I think they all have strengths and weaknesses per se. Dante Moore has that deep ball accuracy that you like, but I really like Ty Simpson's long ball as well. You come to it in the question that I would ask myself if I'm in the front office with Ty Simpson is, you're 23 years old, redshirt junior. Why is it your first year playing?
Yeah.
Why is it your first year behind you? You only have 12 starts under your helm. And like you said, it was a little bit up and down early in the season, but the past 4 or 5 weeks, it's been more bad than good. He's had those kind of situations where he puts the ball in harm's way and turns it over. You talked about the costly fumble yesterday. All right, he took a big hit, broke a rib in the process. That's part of playing football, I guess. So I can kind of forgive him for stuff like that, but it's
a lot of these guys have ball security issues. Not only Simpson, I don't mean to cut you off there, Don, but Dante Moore had 6 fumbles as well this year. Like, a lot of these guys have issues. I think the biggest thing is adjusting a play style at the next level, and I think that's what Giants fans are still looking to see out of Jackson Dart. I always make the example of Lamar Jackson with the Baltimore Ravens. When he came into the league, he had that reckless play style. He was taking hits, and look, he was kind of, one of the really first quarterbacks in recent memory to truly establish himself as that dual threat, of course, after Michael Vick. But he adjusted his play style. And obviously, I mean, the injuries have killed him this year. But before that, he was not really injury prone at all. And it's not asking him to turn away from rushing the ball. It's just adjusting his play style. And I think that's, changes that we're going to see a lot of these guys make at the next level.
Yeah. I think Simpson, the one thing I will say about him as a prospect compared to Moore or Mendoza, Simpson, you're getting a guy who operated from under center a lot more than the other two. I mean, Mendoza and Chambliss didn't. Fun fact, Trinidad Chambliss has never taken a snap under center.
Never.
He didn't take a snap under center this year. He didn't take he operated out of the shotgun at Ferris State. Listen, it was a fourth and inches or stuff like that. Maybe he did take a snap, but for the most part, he operates from the gun. He operates at RPO from the gun. Mendoza operated completely from shotgun. Didn't take a snap under center this year. You know what I mean? Simpson at least is a little bit more pro ready in that sense. I think his offense was a little bit more pro ready.
Yeah.
There's still some, and I think that you're going to get a proven football player and mature leader in Simpson. The question is can he just really turn the corner, right? Because when it's good and he makes some throws that just you drop your jaw and be like, holy geez Louise, how did he make that throw? But when it's bad too. You know what I mean? And there's been more bad than good. Again, I trust my eyes on the full body of work, not just what have you done for me lately kind of thing. I have a early second round grade on Ty Simpson. For me, there's no doubt an NFL team will take a chance with him in the first round. There's no doubt that he'll be a first round pick. He didn't get a first round grade for me, but that doesn't really mean anything. Like I said, I think that he finds a fit. And again, hopefully it's a situation where he's given a long leash. Hopefully he goes into a team that and I think for me, I just correlate Pittsburgh as a if they don't make any coaching changes, that is a perfect location for him, right? He can go in there. Arthur Smith's West Coast style offense, can throw in rhythm, not asking to really press the ball where he can get sloppy a little bit, but he can be putting he can be putting the rollout and putting on the move where he does excel. You got Howard there from Ohio State last year that they can compete with, and both of those guys have really live arms and are both really mobile. They both correlate similar skill sets. So I think to me that would be a great fit for Ty Simpson. I wouldn't rule him out of the Jets selection if they do miss out on the Moore or the Mendoza sweepstakes, if you will. I wouldn't rule Ty Simpson out. I know that the scouts have, the Jets spent a lot of doing their homework on all of these top prospects. They spent a lot of time with Simpson. They spent a lot more time with Moore and Mendoza, but they spent a lot of time with Simpson. So, there's going to be he's going to hear his name called early if he does declare. And listen, in on that rare situation that Moore goes back to school, which is a possibility. Probably less possible than the other guys. But if Simpson and Shamblas all go back to school, you could have more Simpson and Shamblas. Could be a one dog race here for a quarterback.
Yeah, that's how crazy it is. Look, because there is a possibility where that is the case. Mendoza, who hasn't officially declared yet, but that'll just be a formality when he officially puts that announcement out. I mean, that's a very real possibility. Look, I think if I had to put money on it, I would bet on Dante Moore coming out compared to going to school. But Ty Simpson is still one of those 50-50s. Chambliss as well. Dom, I know we got a few minutes left with you. I kind of want to touch on three other quarterbacks who we didn't get to, but have kind of been, just lingering, made a statement last year, may have cooled down. This year, Carson Beck, Cade Klubnik, those are the top two, and then John Mateer from Oklahoma is someone I want to get to. Carson Beck was obviously on trajectory a couple of years ago to be, number one overall selection in 2024, like Quinn Ewers was supposed to be. And then obviously that brutal injury at Georgia, had to get surgery. First year at Miami, I think a really, really good year for him. But also, you got to weigh in the fact that he is 23 years old right now. He'll be 23, obviously, by his rookie season. He's intriguing, right? Because he's good. I think he's a good player. He's a good quarterback, certainly someone who will get drafted, but not someone like Tyler Shuck, who we spoke about earlier on in the show, who was complete, and the age was the only thing that really stopped him from being a first-round pick. I don't view Carson Beck as a complete prospect.
Yeah, so I happen to really like Carson Beck, and I've done extensive evals on him from his time in Georgia to this year in Miami. I like her. Let me rephrase that. I happen to like him a lot. I think he can play the position. I just don't know if he's an NFL starter, and it's funny because I can have that same statement. I hold that statement holds true with a lot of these guys. Like he's going to have to he's going to have to be put in the perfect situation to really excel, to be put in a position to really excel. But you talk about prototypical quarterback size, you talk about, an NFL arm, you talk about an NFL processor, how he can, see what's going on pre-snap, post-snap, adjust post-snap, get through his progressions, a great anticipatory deliverer of the ball as well. His teammates love him. I just don't know. Like I said, he breaks down too much. And we joked about Mendoza when the pocket breaks down, or the awareness and stuff like that. Like when Beck feels, the problem with him is I think he's gotten that whole seeing ghosts thing in him. Like he gets perceived pressures and he gets happy feet. And once he gets happy feet and he's got to extend or escape, it's all downhill.
He's a check down Charlie too.
Yeah, he is a very productive quarterback if kept clean, but the moment there's a sense of pressure, he changes. And he puts the ball in harm's way more than almost at an alarming rate. His completion percentage goes from like 79% adjusted to 54% adjusted when he's pressured. The pressure to sack rate or sack to pressure rate is really, really bad. Again, he's a middling at best. At absolute best athlete, so he's not going to offer you anything with his legs. To me, Carson Beck's a guy like, Aiden O'Connell. I'm not comping him. Andy Dalton. You come in, and if he's got to start some games or relieve your starting quarterback, you hope that he can get you to a 500 average. But I just don't know if he's got if it's all wrapped up. Like if you could take him from the neck up and put him on a body like Trinidad Chambliss or Brendan Sorsby, for instance, I think you'd have like an all-world quarterback.
Now, the second name I want to get into, Cade Klubnik from Simpson. This is someone who last year at this time, there were talks about him potentially coming out. Ultimately, he stayed back, but I mean, a breakout year. His second year of really having that full starting job. He was a true junior. 14 games, over 60% completion, 36 touchdowns, over 3,500 passing yards. Just overall a great year. Improved so much from 2023 in every single metric. Pretty much across the chart. One of the most improved players in all of college football. Then this year, 36 touchdowns, went to 16 touchdowns, 6 interceptions, stayed 6 interceptions. under 3,000 passing yards. Just a really, really rough year for someone who was supposed to take another leap forward after he decided to stay back at Clemson. Where's his true draft stock? Because again, super top heavy class, but this is someone who was really, digressed as of late.
Yeah. So funny you talk about Klubnik, because Klubnik was my favorite quarterback coming into the summer scouting portion after last season, getting ready for this fall season. I had Klubnik as my number one quarterback.
Wow.
I absolutely did. I thought there was a lot to like, and truth be told, there still is a lot to like in Cade Klubnik. The Clemson, the Clemson team this year and their season is something that needs to be studied by like ESPN 30 for 30, because when there is just too much talent and too much good coaching for it to have the end result that it did. And it was just really bad. Now, listen, Klubnik didn't do himself any favors, because he didn't take the step up that everyone expected. Yep. He lacked the ability to put the team that was just crumbling and not making plays and not disciplined, and he lacked the ability to kind of take that team, put him on his shoulder, and carry him through the firing squad. He couldn't do that. I don't think Cade Klubnik's season was as bad as a lot of people made it out to be. Mm-hmm. I just don't think that he showed that he wasn't ready for the prime time. Last year, I thought he was good, and he would take that next step and really become very good and be talked about in the same notion as some of these Heisman candidates, so on and so forth. Yeah. But he just kind of took like a backseat as everything fell about. He kind of played down to the level of the Clemson offense or the Clemson team as a whole, which is really really sad, because a lot of the things that he did last year, you still saw him this year. And a lot of the mistakes that he was making last year, you still saw him this year. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? You talk about a guy, you talk about turnover-worthy throws, right? Last year he needed to, he played too much hero ball last year. Got himself in trouble by putting the ball up in harm's way. That didn't change. He still doesn't have that ability. Like you talk about check down Charlie, or you talk about short throws, like within 7 yards from the line of scrimmage and in. Cade Klubnik is fine. He throws every ball with the same tempo and the same velocity, and that just doesn't work very well at the next level. Like I think it's a lot of it is him rushing and that processing, getting through it too fast. His deep ball has not been there at all. He struggled against, simulated. He struggled against pressures and blitzes. Although he's, can scoot a little bit, can hustle around a little bit with his legs. I don't know if he's ever really considered to be a high end or a dual threat quarterback last year. He struggled with that this year. And on top of it, like he's also small, he's also slender, putting the ball in harm's way, making bad decisions, instead of just throwing the ball away or taking sacks when, he doesn't have to take sacks. Again, I don't know if there was a regression from last year to this year, but I can tell you sure as, this day is long, that there was no progression. I think he was the same quarterback as he was last year. It's just the team around him really crumbled, and he didn't really elevate himself to carry the team.
Absolutely. Certainly an interesting perspective. Now, two more guys I kind of want to, just break down.
Sure.
Quickly. John Mateer, Oklahoma, someone super hot start to the year. All eyes on him, Oklahoma, he's bound to, get some comps to Baker Mayfield, another white dude, wears the bandana. And then that injury hit. And ever since then, you kind of saw his stock decrease a little bit. I still like John Mateer. I think you see the traits that he plays with. But he's another one who can still go back to school. That is still certainly an option for him.
Yeah, and I expect him to exercise that option. Like for me, I took him completely out of my grading for this quarterback cycle. Okay. I've evaled him, and I've done an eval on him, and reviewed his film. But at this point, I've taken him completely out. I expect him to go back to school. I expect him to be there. He is fun. That's an easy way to explain John Mateer. Like, the arm talent is real. Like, he can put some giddy up on it. He's got some pop behind it. His ball travels, with zip and gets, is really, really spot on, accurate in the short and intermediate. I love the effort he puts into throwing those deep balls as well. It's a little bit, obviously, he's a little bit undersized. I think he's more athlete than quarterback right now. But his build is so different than anything else that you see in the collegiate game in football. So I think defenses are still trying to figure him out. I think his internal clock kind of has to still get a little bit slower, for him to really excel. Again, I'm not sure if we're ever going to really talk about John Mateer as a true NFL starter. I think he's got a chance. I think he's kind of really niche. Like I could see him, I could see him being, a wildcat quarterback or a team that a team has a couple, has some special plays.
Dorian Thompson-Robinson.
Yeah, some special plays or a special, set of plays package that they can use him in, because he's, going to be 6 feet tall, 225 pounds, so low to the ground. He's like a bowling ball. He's like a bowling ball with an elastic band on his shoulder. There's still a lot of growing to do in terms of playing the position of quarterback. And, what you can't do is you can't knock his love for the game and his moxie. He didn't have to come back from this injury. He chose to come back. That guy wants to play. That guy loves the game of football, and you want guys like that in your locker room. Like, he's a guy that I don't know if he'll ever be an NFL starter, to be honest with you, Connor.
Wow.
But I'm going to root for him no matter what the case is with him.
Yeah. Absolutely. The final name I want to kind of touch on here quickly, Penn State, Drew Allar. This is someone who, again, around this time last year, college football playoffs, around the semifinals, there was a lot of hype for him to declare for the draft. And I still believe, look, I'm not as big on Drew Allar as some of the super fans, some of the people who think he's the next Josh Allen. I'm certainly not going that far. But if you look back at this time last year, I think if he declared for the draft, he could have been a first-round pick. That is, I think, how high his stock was. He makes the decision to go back to Penn State. They get off to a super rough start the first 6 games of the year. And then snap of the fingers, massive season-ending injury. He's done, finishes the year just 6 games. And that takes him from, potentially being, if he continued to progress, again, in that first round, maybe second round conversation, to now probably a day 3 pick. In my first mock off season for us over at JetX, I took an interesting approach to the mock draft part of it. This was back in November. I had the Jets taking Simpson at 5 after Mendoza had been off the board. And I kind of doubled up. I chose Allar in the 6th round, just kind of a, low risk, high reward type swing there on someone who has the traits, who I think has what it takes to be a quarterback at the next level. Where does his stock sit after this injury? And truly, what can he be?
I think he's the long lost or the forgotten player in this quarterback class.
Yeah.
He's got everything that you want, prototypical height, build, cannon of an arm.
Mm-hmm.
He's from Ohio, played at Penn State. Cold weather is not a problem. He's got 11 and a half, almost 12-inch hands. He's a cold weather guy. I think he runs very effectively. I think he's got like 28 broken tackles over his career. Although he's not not a dual threat, in any sense of the word, but he's very tough and punishing as a runner. Again, I think he has some, I think he's got good awareness. I think he's got good understanding of what's going on with him. He makes a lot out of nothing over the past couple of years. The Penn State receiver position hasn't really been much. Like, we know Tyler Warren was pretty much the offense there last year, and this year it wouldn't have been much better. in terms of weapons. I mean, they're a team that wants to run the ball first and play off the play action. And I think that's what he does very well. I think he's pro style quarterback, so I think he can come in and play. Like I said, he maneuvers around the pocket very well. Can create with his legs when he wants. He makes some throws that are automatically or absolutely going to, like, your jaw's going to drop sometimes. And how did he do that? But it's just not consistent enough. Mm-hmm. It's just not consistent enough. And the knock on Allar, and it's not a knock. I mean, it's proven fact. Is like when pressure is at its highest, he seems to burst. The toughest games, the best competition, the best defenses have been his historic worst games. So he doesn't rise to the occasion. And I think a lot of that is not necessarily his fault. I don't think Penn State and Franklin was a great fit for him. If he was put into a situation with a much more structured offensive mind,
like Kiffin,
like Kiffin, like DeBoer in Alabama or something like that. Guys that know, or Jeff Brom in Louisville, guys that know how to really play to the quarterback and get the most out of him. I think you would have seen Allar. Yeah, you would have seen the best out of Allar. He's just late, man. For him, it's just like that. He's got to pull the trigger. He throws that occasional YOLO ball. That'll get, pretty much clean itself up, or it won't. But the fact of him not being on time and accurate with his throws causes him to miss those opportunities and hit the check down. So you talk about check down Charlies. There's no bigger one in this draft than Drew Allar. Now, but I think it's because, like I said, I think his processing is just a step behind. If he can get with somebody and get that cleaned up, you're looking at a whole different. You're looking at a guy that can start meaningful games in the NFL.
Dom, thank you so much for the time. As always, super fun chatting up with you guys. Thank you all for tuning in. If you made it this point, be sure to drop down below, smash the like button, hit subscribe, completely free, helps grow significantly. Of course, if you haven't already, which you probably have, follow Dom C over on Twitter. What is it? DC_NY Jets. That the handle, Dom?
Yes, sir. And you can obviously read all my stuff on Jets X Factor and catch me on Monday nights. Still with the Talking Jets crew, Ryan and Matt O'Leary, Green Bean, and those guys for Jets Draft Talk Monday nights, 8 to 9 p.m.
Love it, Dom. Thank you. Everyone, we appreciate you tuning in. Smash the like button. Hit subscribe for Dom C. I'm Connor Long, right here on NY Flight Jets Talk, saying have a great rest of your day, morning, evening, however and wherever you are tuning in. And as always, JTS, Jets, Jets, Jets. Peace out.